Hi there, welcome to Games Over Qualia. My name is Devon. These videos work in 3 different parts. First, you send me your game and you fill out this form about your intended experience. Second, I'll play the game completely blind and then I explain what I think the game was trying to do. Third, I compare my blind experience with your intended experience and we'll see if they align or if they don't. Today's game is called Scene Double by Serrated Studios, and this was submitted by Dirk. This was the only thing that he wanted me to know before going in. Knowing that, let's go play. Okay, I have just finished playing Scene Double. I've recorded my first impressions right here. We're going to listen to that while we watch my first playthrough of the game. So the game was called Scene Double. The developer is called Serrated Studios. So I actually had trouble getting the controller to work. The developer knew about this. I reached out to them and they fixed it, which was really awesome. But I had actually played the entire game on the keyboard before that happened because platformers are like my deal. Like I actually really like platformers and controlling the keyboard is not going to stop me from playing it. So I beat the game with, the game is a demo, but yeah, I beat the demo using just the keyboard. The game is really good. It's designed very, very well. And it's paced out very, very well. I really like it. The teaching is actually really good in here. I've said this before about game design, where good game design just kind of washes over me and I don't really pay attention to it as I'm playing the game. And this one did that. This one washed over me quite a bit when I was playing. The onboarding, I think, is terrifically done. Of course, this is coming from someone who, really likes platformers. So that's my bias. But also the mechanic in here is a strange one. It's a mechanic where you have a split screen and you have to control both characters on either side of the screen at the same time. And they have different terrain. And the terrain in one area affects the placement of the character in the other. And so you have to constantly switch between looking at one side of the screen versus the other in order to advance. It's not a very simple mechanic to teach, and yet they did it, or at least they did it for me. And I always want to hold all of these games to a standard that may not be fair, but it's something that I feel makes a game stand out from other games. I'm not going to call it like a high standard because I don't believe in objective standards. That doesn't really make any sense. There's just the standard that I believe I want to see games achieve. I want to see games be unique art pieces that not only are fun, but capture me somehow, that make me want to invest my time and energy into it. The games that I'm talking about, if I ever critique them, it's because I don't feel like they're hitting on the uniqueness that they could. And when I say uniqueness, I'm not talking about originality. To be unique, in my mind, is just to be expressive from the artist. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's wholly original. You don't necessarily need to be original. When I'm critiquing any game, be it this one, be it Scene Double or anything else, I may come off as harsh. I may come off as someone who is looking past the thing that it's trying to do. That's just the way that I'm looking at games because I want them to be more than just the set of mechanics, right? I want them to be more than the sum of their parts. That being said, like I said before, I love the game design of this game, and I love the mechanics in this game, and I had a lot of fun playing it. But beyond that, there's nothing else that would bring me back to this game. Once I played it, I wouldn't say that I would want to play it again. There was nothing that made me go, oh, you know what, I'll shell out a lot of dollars for this game when it comes out in the future. Now, the reason why I don't say that is not because I didn't have fun. Like I said, there are some things, however, that if the game expanded upon these things, would make me personally want to follow this game's development, or at least follow this game when it gets released, And those things are the storytelling. Now, this is, of course, bias. Obviously, this is bias. This whole thing is subjective. For me, when I play this game, I'm someone who really attaches themselves to storytelling. I love storytelling so much. So the thing that grabbed me the most in this game wasn't necessarily the platforming mechanic, even though it was fun. It was the storytelling. The storytelling, I think, visually was done really, really well. You get like the entire plot of the game in the first 10 seconds. This is just so effectively done, and I love this so much. You see these two characters, they have hearts coming out, and this is like the main menu of the game. And then when you start the game, they look at each other, they feed each other cherries, which coincidentally is the same type of collectible you get later on, which I think is really cute. After they feed each other cherries, then they hug. And then there's like the strange thing that happens and they get separated where the pink one just goes away. then the blue one frantically moves around, and now you start the game. You can put that sequence in front of almost anyone on Earth, right? Almost, regardless if they speak your language or not. And they'll be able to understand what the plot of the game is. I think that's incredibly well done. It feels so simple, but that's kind of what this is about, right? It's about being effective, and that is like super effective storytelling. I really, really like that. Beyond that, what you do is you play as that first character a little bit. After you get used to moving around and everything, as this first blue character, you come to an area that you can't get out of. You go into a pit. Even though you try a bunch of times, your character then stops, he tries to think, and then suddenly there's a title reveal, and then it shows the split screen, and now you're playing as both characters. And immediately you see how to get out of the pit using the other character's screen. So good. I just really, really like that. But keeping with the storytelling, there's a lot of characters that you come across that are fourth wall breaking. And they're kind of fourth wall breaking as in they're self-aware that it's a game, or self-aware that there's certain mechanics that exist. And it's funny, right, when they bring attention to what mechanics you're using. I thought that was really cute. And then as I keep playing the game, I come to this part at the very end. I would say, please play this game first. There's a demo. There's a link in the description. I'm going to spoil the last part here. So the last part of the demo, I think, is really, really interesting because it's so contrasted with everything else. And this is kind of the highlight of what I wanted to talk about in terms of storytelling. There's a bunch of fourth wall breaking. It's a bunch of comedy. It's very cute. And then at the very end, you have it basically turns into a horror where your character comes across just a wall and you can't get past the wall. And so now you're stuck in just kind of this empty zone where you don't know what to do until suddenly there's some sort of crazy noise and you're told to hide. And they introduce this little mechanic. Again, absolutely, amazing visual storytelling done here, where actually this is interactive storytelling in this part, where you have to hide the pink character by making the blue character go into an obvious little hole that does not exist on the right side. This monster starts making this noise, and then the screen starts glitching up, and then the pink character starts crying, and there's like this very slow type of glitchy kind of entity that comes out and like searches for you, and it's very horrific. Like it's a horror being told right here. It's very contrasted to all of the other comedy that's been happening. I absolutely loved it, right? I loved that storytelling so much. But what made me feel weird about it was that it didn't seem to be cohesive. It didn't seem to be very consistent, unless what we're trying to do from the beginning is to create a horror that, culminates in this. But it didn't really feel like that. It felt like there was a bunch of little pieces here that this person had just kind of put into the gameplay, and it didn't feel like they were the star of the show. And this brings me to like a strange kind of feeling where it feels like the creator doesn't care about the characters. And I know that sounds kind of harsh. It feels as if the characters are an afterthought, and it feels like the journey that they're going through is an afterthought. From the beginning of the game, I felt very connected to these characters because it feels very minimal in their storytelling. I'm an advocate of minimal storytelling in this fashion, where you can create really strong empathetic threads by not giving the audience a whole lot, where they just start to imagine what the characters are thinking rather than telling them explicitly what they are thinking. That's the whole key to visual storytelling. So I feel like, that was done here. And so I grew this kind of empathetic thread here, but I felt like because of the fourth wall breaking comedy and the self-awareness and the strange, contrasted horror there at the very end, it feels as though I'm disconnected from the character. It feels like I'm looking in from the outside, and I'm looking as if it's a toy box that we're playing with instead of a story that we're inside of. And the reason why it feels that way to me is because, again, it doesn't feel cohesive. It doesn't feel like there's a whole story here. It feels like there's a bunch of pieces. It feels like there's a toy box. With my main criticism being about the storytelling, that's a good thing for your game mechanics, right? Because your game, I think, is fantastic, right? I think mechanically, the game feels really good. It needs more than that for me to be more engaged with it. It doesn't feel like I'm very engaged with it. If we're talking about games as escapism, that's what they're going to provide for me, is this kind of world that I want to step inside of. And, not all games need to be stories, and I understand that. The reason why I'm focusing so much on the story in this one is because it does have one. Now, if this game did not have a story, and if I was just playing as these little characters, this would probably be a different thing that I'm talking about. Seeing Double really effectively told a good visual story to me, a good interactive one too. It really hooked me into the game. It really got a hold of my empathetic kind of tendencies to try to understand characters that I'm playing as. And it really got its claws into my storytelling kind of addiction. Because I loved that so much, I was grasping for more of that, and I didn't get more of it as I played more of the game. Now, this is, like I said, this is a subjective thing. This is just me, and I'm a person who, is very, very interested in storytelling. So it makes sense that this is what happened in my eyes. But that's what I felt here. It was this incompleteness of the story that got to me. And like I said, if it wasn't for those storytelling moments, like the horror at the end or the, love in the beginning, then none of this I wouldn't care about any of this. This is simultaneously a really, really good job and kind of aggravating at the same time because I want more of it. I want more, and it doesn't feel like a tease. It feels incomplete, and I want to be clear there. I don't charge for any of this. This channel is completely running on donations, so if you'd like to make a donation, you can buy me a coffee. There's a link in the description. I got the answers from the developer, and here are my questions. Question 1 was, what were you hoping that the player would feel while playing your game? The answer I got was, I wanted to give the player a unique platforming experience and challenge them to see things from multiple perspectives. I felt that was a little vague, so I asked for a clarification or a more detailed answer. And the second answer was, I wanted to have the player experience a sense of satisfaction when they figured out how to solve certain puzzle segments. I also wanted them to think the cutscenes were cute, the NPCs were funny, and the end was terrifying. Question 2 was, why did you choose this experience instead of another one? The answer they gave me was, I just had an idea for this type of platformer one day and ran with it. So I asked for a more detailed answer, and they gave me, the split screen mechanic is the core of the game, but in my opinion, a game needs variety to keep players invested, otherwise it can get stale fast. The NPCs, non-platform puzzle segments, jokes, cutscenes, lore, story, and the scary moments are all intended to give the game more flavor and keep the player interested with fresh, unique content. That's also why I tried to introduce a new mechanic for every new screen that the player encounters. Question 3 was, were there any specific moments, mechanics, or ideas that you built around that emotional goal? The answer they gave me was, not sure, the idea just came to me one day. If you've seen the intro to the show, you know that I try to compare my experience with the intentions of the developer. Now, if the developer themselves doesn't know what they intended, then it's a little difficult for me to compare my experience with it, because, if they didn't know, then there's no comparison going on. I was just editing my video and I was just thinking about this part where I said the developer doesn't know the intentions. When I'm looking for intentions regarding emotions in this particular game, this one I was looking for why they made those specific decisions. So yes, they did have the intentions of making something funny, making something scary, and making something cute. But to the developer, why did you want to make it cute? Why make it funny? Why make it scary? Like, why those specific emotions and why not any other emotion? What I'm trying to get at here is, why did you express yourself in this way? And that's a very difficult thing for anyone to analyze. So that's what I mean here when I'm saying that the developer may not have known their intentions, because, yeah, to you, developer, you may not have known why you made it funny or cute or scary. It may have just felt right. And so that's what I'm talking about here. I'm not blaming anyone here, because as a creator, whenever you create anything, you don't really know why you're doing it. I mean, most people, at least most artists, I would say, don't know why they create. It's just they have something in them that they need to get out. They need to express to the world something, right? And that doesn't always, come in very easy to identify packages. Even when you try to self-reflect on your art and you try to understand why it is that you made something, it can be really difficult, for someone who just does it just out of a natural tendency. It can also be really difficult if you're really close with your project, and you end up creating something for so long that you just kind of understand everything intuitively, and suddenly it becomes a part of you and it's no longer something separate. What I'm going to do is I'm going to explain why my experience was different than that of their explanation. So their intentions were, let's read the notes again. Give the player a sense of satisfaction when they figured out how to solve certain puzzle segments. Think the cutscenes were cute, NPCs were funny, and the end was terrifying. So let's compare that to what I thought. Did I have a sense of satisfaction when I completed the puzzles? Yes. Did I think the cutscenes were cute? Yes. Were the NPCs funny? Yes. Was the end terrifying? Yes. The second answer was also the split screen mechanic is the core of the game, but my opinion is that every game needs variety to keep players interested. Let's go into my experience a little bit. So if you noted when I talked about my experience, I talked about it in terms of narrative. Everyone who experiences any kind of art, be it a game or a painting or a book or a movie or whatever, whenever you're engaged with something like that, you have taste. Everyone has their own taste. For me, I am so drawn to narrative just in general. I really, really like narrative and structure of narrative and all that kinds of stuff. I felt like the creator wasn't giving me enough story, and I felt like I wanted more story. And it turns out, from the explanations of the intentions, at least as much as you provided, Dirk, for Serrated Studios, it doesn't seem like you had much to tell here. But for me, someone who, again, appreciates all these things, what you gave me was so minimal that I ended up, pulling all these different connections. And I ended up connecting everything together thinking, oh, there's a much grander type of narrative here that is just in the background, that the developer is just not giving me all of it. And it turns out, well, maybe that's not the thing, but that's what I connected with the most. And I think that's really interesting. For someone like me, if you were to make this game for me, and this is just me, I would want to see more narrative given in the way that you gave it, but tease a little bit more, right? Seeing, like I've talked about cracks in the system before. I'd want to see a lot of that. It's interesting because it got me thinking about other narrative games, and I'm thinking of AAA ones in particular. Actually, this also does apply to indie games that have been submitted to me actually a few times in the past. Somebody has a narrative that they want to share, so they put it into their game, but they put it really heavy-handedly. I don't want to make fun of this developer at all because it's I think what they did was incredible, but I'm talking about one of these games that I talked about a long time ago, called Curse of Zix. Curse of Zix had this really ambitious goal to tell this really big story about this hero that was a prince that witnessed his father dying, I think, and then went out to try to basically save the kingdom. There was even a moment where his friend died in front of him, and he went and escaped just as his friend was dying. Anyway, there was a lot of really heavy drama in there, but I never really cared about any of it because I wasn't engaged with the game at any of those moments. And it just seems like it was front-loaded with emotion, right? It even started out with a cinematic. And so the game really demanded a lot from me emotionally, but I didn't give it to there because I didn't have suspension of disbelief. But when there's games like that are front-loaded with so much emotion, and that the creator, has this story that they want to share with other people, and they're saying, hey, look at this story, isn't it interesting? Buy into all my characters and these arcs and everything. The reason why it doesn't always work, I don't think, is because I want to say you're putting too much expectation on the people, because anyone who plays your game is not automatically going to be invested. And I think this works really well when you look at a game like yours, Dirk, when you're looking at Seeing Double. Seeing Double doesn't demand a whole lot from me. All it does is it gives me little pieces, and it says, hey, these characters are together and now they're apart. Because I'm directly responsible for some of these things, I'm playing as the character, and I'm thinking things like, okay, where is the other character? Why did they get split up, right? I start formulating all these questions in my mind because of all this mystery that you've given me. And I think what you've done is you've, accidentally stumbled on something that I think is really, really good. And I think that's creating a really engaging type of atmosphere, at least for someone like me, who is narratively inclined. I really like that. And that's the kind of stuff that stood out to me a lot more than the split screen mechanic, because the split screen mechanic was cool, sure, but it's the other things that caught my attention, because the game otherwise feels competent and it feels good enough. It doesn't really feel like it stands out from the crowd except for the narrative stuff. So that is everything. Thank you so much, Dirk from Serrated Studios, for submitting this game and just putting it in a really vulnerable spot for me to just tear it apart. There's a Discord link in the description if you'd like to join the Discord. We have lots of game developers in there, and we like to talk about game design quite a lot. There's also an extra podcast that I have called GOQ Talk on Patreon. If you'd like to check that out, there's a link in the description. You can also get a free membership, so check that out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys another time. Peace.